Hi, I'm Kristen, and today I wanted to take some time to let you in on a typical day in my private remote teaching life. So I actually teach at two exclusively remote studios. In one studio, I teach primarily trans voice lessons. If you don't know what that is, you should look it up. It involves helping people in different stages of transition accomplish their voice goals, whether it be feminization, masculinization, or androgynous voice. And then the second studio that I teach more general music, piano, voice, and a little bit of speech, accent reduction. Also a side note about the first studio. The first studio, I also do teach speech lessons. I say voice, but in a different context. I am helping people to curate and learn to use the voice that is best representative of who they are. So that's my whole gig. I want to be super clear and say that this is no less than a dream. It's difficult, but it's a dream. I've always wanted to have a remote capable music career. Part of it was because of the fact that I've met a lot of people along the way who are doing things in other areas of the world that I can't really get to. And I want to be able to collaborate with them. And then the other reason is just because I want to be able to make my professional capabilities accessible when people can't get to me physically. So just so happens that COVID really tested that capability for my music career. No fault of their own. I've seen several of my colleagues quit their choir teaching jobs, retire during the pandemic because it was, I don't know why they did it. I know why I would have done it had I been in the field at my 25 years required, or 20 something years. Way too much going on, too many changing landscapes in terms of what was what choirs could do. And I'm just thankful that I got to continue my musical work, different musical work. I no longer work with choirs primarily, but still musical work. So yeah, hats off to all the people that said no thanks to this profession during the pandemic, because it was something. For the record, my career was interrupted by the pandemic, but I feel like I was a lot more receptive than I thought I would be to making my teaching remote capable. And also online teaching has been something that I've actually enjoyed over the years, both teaching it and being a student of that medium. So just a side note, I want to talk about the fact that it's also pretty difficult because, working from home, working remotely, it involves a lot of tech savviness that I am still working on. And it can be all-encompassing sometimes. All-encompassing. There's a word. There's that word. Because you're remote, sometimes if you have colleagues or superiors in other time zones, you can get requests and tasks and messages late at night that you may or may not need to respond to. And the workaholic in me tends to respond to everything all at once, which is not always great for a steady sleep schedule. So I won't go too much into that right now, but I do just want to say it's a dream because I have a remote capable music career. And it's difficult because it's a little bit untethered from our traditional work schedule and structure. So it can be a little, wild westy. So in terms of actually what I do, I'm going to reference my notes because I've made a list of all the highlights, so bear with me. Generally, I teach my younger students in the morning and my older students in the evening hours. And this is This is every day of the work week. I have some weekend students, but generally I'm teaching several hours in the day, about 2 hours per day for administrative duties, and maybe an extra hour of making materials for my students, things like that, making recordings, and yeah. But here's my typical day in an outline. I wake, I warm up my voice. I studied singing. I studied music education with a vocal emphasis, and I also studied conducting. So there are a lot of just die-hard exercises that I do with my voice to keep it warm, limber, and agile, because I do still perform in all of my spare time. So I wake up, I warm up whenever it's possible. And generally in the morning, in the early mornings, I will have my younger students, as I said. Those are usually the voice, the piano students, more general music. Each day can be different, just as a side note, which I personally love. During the evening times, of course, I'm fitting in meals and breaks, but then I generally have a big block of adult students. And just to be super clear, I love working with adults. This is one of the reasons I got a master's, is because I wanted to work in higher education. So the ability to work with not just school-aged children is the best thing about my remote music teaching career. The day wraps up usually around 8 or 8:15 on a good day. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's later, a little bit later, but generally I'm done seeing students by 9 p.m. full stop. And so my day is about 10 to 11 hours long. That includes breaks, that includes lesson planning, making student materials, and doing my other administrative business. Generally, I haven't talked about this yet, but generally I try to practice. As I said, I try to warm up in the morning. I'm usually talking about getting rid of my morning voice so that I can demonstrate efficiently for my students if I have morning lessons. I actually do try to practice outside of just daily warm-ups. Once again, this is my music background kicking in. I think it's important to keep up my voice. I have a pretty taxing performance coming up, a 2-day performance coming up in the first week of September. And so I'm sort of reworking, rehearsing those pieces that I'll be performing then. And in this process, I try to do regular singer warm-ups every day, and for about, I don't know, maybe 5-10 minutes. And then I will try to listen to, actually sing through, or sing difficult parts of the pieces that I'm actually working on, so that I'm still keeping up my personal repertoire of music pieces while still teaching. Let's see. By the way, I don't practice every day. I practice for my own personal repertoire about 3 to 4 days a week on an average week. If it's about 2 weeks out from a performance, I amp up the rehearsal. Week of the performance, I absolutely drop the rehearsal, and I'm only kind of conceptualizing difficult pieces, maybe lyrics that I haven't completely memorized and things like that. But once again, my music background, week of the performance, you should know everything you're gonna know. You've practiced, excuse me, if you've practiced, it is what it is at that point. So no need to try to reinvent the wheel there. Yeah, so younger students in the morning, older students in the evening. I find time to eat most times, which I need to work on. I usually do a good bulk of my personal practice on the weekends. Sundays, Saturdays, they're actually prime times for me to spend about 30 minutes to an hour working on my own private personal repertoire of songs. So that's my typical day. Once again, it's technically about 10 hours long, but it can be an asymmetrical schedule. Every day is not the same. Every week necessarily is not the same. Because I'm a private instructor, I teach who I have on my schedule. It's not like they enroll in a class that lasts a semester and I have all the students for all of those times. So a lot of my job that I'm realizing is trying to be the right sort of helpful for each student that I encounter. And in order to be helpful, it takes a lot of preparation and a lot of like just administrative and educational work prior to a lesson and sometimes following one as well. So that's my day. I'm being really like kind of serious about it, mostly because I'm trying to actually think about the things that I do and reference my notes and not go willy-nilly here. But I do love my schedule. I love the fact that it's irregular. I love the fact that I get to work with adults, and I am personally still kind of in shock that this is a pretty workable, lucrative, not as lucrative as it could be or should be, but it's a workable career path that I could not have conceived of prior to COVID. So yeah, I don't think a lot of us knew that COVID was going to be as impactful as it was. And maybe that's just me, but I'm still kind of like, so is this my life now? Am I a work from home person? I always wanted to be that, but I never knew exactly what I'd do, because prior to COVID, I taught every lesson I ever taught, every private lesson in person in someone's home. They came to mine. We went to a shared space. We were never remote. We were never Zooming, or Skyping. So it's kind of crazy. I'm still a little bit in shock about it, but anyway. So since doing this the last 2 years, I want to talk about just some of the things that I've learned, because I like to find morals in everything. I'm just that person. I've learned first that if you get a chance to follow a dream and you see that path, take it. Even if it's not well worn, even if it's not suggested or necessarily the most lucrative at the time, hang in there. If you think that this is something that you can do, I've learned to, particularly since the COVID-19 pandemic, that a lot of things that I thought were super important to careers maybe aren't so much. Maybe I don't have to have a PhD by 32 or a DMA, which is what I wanted. Maybe you just need to work on your resilience, hone your skills, and then find a company that wants to use those skills that you have and you like to keep up. So I've learned a couple things about that. The next thing that I've learned is that if you see an area of improvement in yourself or a company that you're working with or a group that you're working with, speak up. Just say something about it. And don't just say something to complain. Come with a solution. Come with an alternative to the status quo. I've learned, because both of the companies that I work for are technically new, and by technically new, I mean, I believe they've been around for less than 5 to 7 years. And they're both exclusively remote companies. And I'm assuming they got a big boom and big influx of consumers and customers and clients during the pandemic. And so I've learned that if you're unclear about a policy, or you're wondering about a process, or you're wondering if you can contribute something that may or may not already be on the list of things that the company does, say something. It can't hurt, and it might just help you be more fulfilled as an employee of this company. I feel pretty lucky about the companies that I work with, but I can't stress that enough, that you speak up, just say something. What's the worst that could happen? Exactly. Generally, most companies want to improve, and if they don't, chances are you might not want to be a part of that company. And so I've personally learned, particularly with the studio that specializes in working with trans speech lessons or voice lessons, that they're doing good work. They want their employees to know that they're doing good work. And so I've learned to just kind of offer my cooperation. If I see something that can be done or I have a question, just say something. You know, it's as simple as an email, literally, or a Zoom call. Nothing can go wrong there. The next thing that I've learned since being a private music instructor is to rely on my expertise and my training. Sometimes I encounter a lot of bloggers, YouTubers, musicians on YouTube types that don't necessarily have a background in music. And I'm not trying to call out anyone in particular, but I encounter a lot of armchair musicians, and armchair teachers. And I've learned to not second guess my own expertise, my gut feeling, my instinct about a thing that should happen with student X. And I've gotten rewarded for it, which is extremely gratifying. And to just kind of bring this back to something like a real example. For instance, a student might be having trouble with resonance. And if you know what resonance is, then you can figure out, if you don't already know, how to help them with it. But if you think that resonance is projection, then you're just going to tell them to speak or sing louder. And this is sometimes the issue with getting armchair music advice. People don't always know the mechanics of the voice, in my case. And so they can offer inadequate advice. And so I've learned to rely on my expertise. It may seem super nerdy, but I just keep my diction, my vocal pedagogy, and all of my notes from grad school and undergrad with me handy. I like to share these things with my students, and I like to find simple ways to explain complicated mechanical vocal concepts, because, you know, knowledge can be power in the right hands. Can I patent that? But I'll say it again. Knowledge can be power in the right hands. So I've learned to just not second guess myself. I tend to be a second guessing person. If what somebody else is doing looks more shiny, more exciting, I tend to think it's better, but that's not always true. Sometimes you need good-hearted, nerdy advice, and that's for the win. The last thing I want to talk about that I've learned being a remote music teacher is that you have to know your limits. So I talked about like relying on my expertise and stuff. This is the thing that allowed me to rely on my expertise. It was knowing my limits. So for instance, I don't know a lot about how to speak Japanese. Someone comes to me and says, "Can you do this?" It's fine to tell that inquiring client, "I don't know how to do this. I can learn and I can help you with it, but I am not an expert in this, and there's no shame in that." Know your boundaries. If the person says, "Well, I need an expert. You're here at this company. Can't you help me?" I've just learned to be like, "Nope, I can't help you with that. I know some people who can, or I will help you find the people that can, but generally, that's not me." My specialty is voice, speech, and anything related to singing. So that's my wheelhouse. And unless I feel confident in other areas, I'm not gonna sell myself as an expert in it. And I'm not gonna be bullied or encouraged into trying to sell myself as a fraud in certain areas when I know that's not what I am. So there's that. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I really wanted to talk about this, and I know it's been pretty long-winded here. I didn't realize I had so much to say until I started saying it. And I hope that this was helpful to someone. If I can leave you with one thing, it's that don't give up on something like working from home, or remote teaching, or changing the medium of your business or your skill set. Just because it's an untapped resource, chances are, even if it's unpopular, you can make it happen. And with the right buttressing and help and support, you can find people to help you get the people to you. So don't give up on that. Also, be nice to yourself. Give yourself a little bit of grace, and know that I'm going to be out here hoping that everybody is following their dream with their head on straight, eyes clear, but knowing themselves enough to know, I want to do this, and that popular path over there, I don't necessarily want to take right now. So that's my 2 cents. I'm going to link the website to the trans voice / speech lesson studio that I work for. And if you know anyone that might want to take advantage of our services, we offer voice feminization, voice masculinization, and androgynous voice work, as well as a plethora of general music lessons, instrumental, vocal, engineering, the whole bit. So if you or someone you know might want to take advantage of that, the link will be down there in the description box. It is called Your Lessons Now. And I want to just thank you all for hanging with me for this, this rant here. I can be long-winded, and that's just kind of the way I am. So if you have something that you'd like for me to address, talk about, please let me know in the comment section below. And I'm gonna see y'all later. Take care. Bye-bye.